so I have this podcast. What I do on this podcast usually is I just talk to the camera myself. So I just talk about the things I'm working on a day-to-day basis, little short snippets. But I want to talk to people and just have like fun, interesting conversations, right? And you're a great person to talk to, particularly because of, well, all the time, really. But you're in the marketing space. You like to do this kind of stuff. Plus, now we have all this coronavirus, craziness going on. So there's just a lot of interesting things to talk about. So that's what I want to do. I just want to have fun conversations and really kind of get into what's going on. Obviously, talk about what you do and who you are and those kinds of things in that context, and just sort of like talk, just to have a good time. So I don't have any hard hitting questions or anything like that. I'm not, bringing the pain or anything. I just like to talk about this stuff. I love business. I love marketing. I love advertising. I love all of it. And I also love sort of, mindset and, leadership and growth and all that kind of stuff that you really have to have to, I think.
That's the bread and butter, man. We can talk about that for hours.
Yeah. Cause it's like, how do you get people to actually do this stuff that you want them to do, right? That will work, but that they're sort of afraid to take a chance on, especially when it comes to creating video and things like that. So anyway, why don't we start with it? So we're recording already. I'll chop the front off a little bit, but why don't you just tell everybody who you are and what you do? Just give like your 30-second elevator speech, and then we'll just talk.
Okay. And by the way, just for context, because someone's going to ask me, 30, 40 minutes, you think that'll be good? Like, would that be enough time for this?
Yeah, it'll be fine. Yep, we'll get off. It was going till 1. We'll just stop at 1. Is that good for you?
Perfect.
All right, cool.
All right, man. You want me to just jump in, talk
tell me who you are. Who are you? And what do you do? Give us the elevator speech.
Yep. So I'm Michael Mogill. I'm the founder and CEO of Crisp Video, and our company, we're essentially a law firm growth company. So we do everything from create content to market the content to also provide coaching and training for firm owners and leaders, how basically they can not just have a great team, but also have great processes and systems, and ultimately just be able to grow their practice. Because we found that if you have just the stuff on the front end, so let's say you've got great content, how do you place it and how do you get it out in front of your ideal client? But let's say you even do that. Let's say you've got great content in front of your ideal client. The success of which a business is able to grow is still going to be largely dependent upon the leader and the team that's there. So if you want to increase ROI, you've got to improve the business from within.
Yep. How did you get into the lawyer space? Like, is there a story behind that? Like, I don't know. I know, like I said, I know a little bit about what you do, but I don't know much about how you got to where you are. Like, what's that? How'd you find law firms and lawyers?
Well, in truth, this happened by accident. I mean, years and years ago. So when I started the company, and we were like a bootstrap company, it was just me in my apartment, $500 to my name. We had no focus. So, we started in the big brand space as many companies do. So like we're in Atlanta, many companies, work with Coca-Cola. I think everybody lists Coca-Cola as a client. They were actually a client. But Coca-Cola, Verizon, and so on. And then we started to look at different industries. So we've got, dental and medical and tech and financial and so on. So, legal happened by accident. A firm owner, she reached out to us. She had no online presence whatsoever. And we helped her create a great video, which really helped their business grow. And we did it again for another firm owner and another firm owner. And what was happening at the time was, we were looking at ways in which we can make a greater impact. And we found that, for the Coca-Colas of the world, you weren't really moving the needle that much. Like, you could create great brand campaign content, but at the end of the day, like you could help, in my view, running a small business at the time, you could help other small businesses at a much greater level and a much greater impact, versus a large corporate conglomerate. So that's where we made that shift. And as far as legal goes, after working with enough firms, I started looking at the legal industry and found that, there's a couple of things. One, you got a super competitive industry that's super saturated, tons of competition in every major market. At the same time, there's never less trust in lawyers by consumers, so they're battling against that. And then on top of that, many lawyers and law firms are viewed as commodities. So there's an immense need to differentiate and stand out. And what I was seeing was that for the last 15 or 20 years, there just wasn't a whole lot of evolution in the way that legal marketing was being done,
For sure.
particularly video. So, there was a lot in the way of like direct response, traditional advertising, like TV, radio, billboards, they all fight for you, yell on top of a semi truck. There was a lot of that. But what I found was missing was, and we've said this, at times we say the best cases go to the best marketers. So we would find that, the best cases wouldn't, and unfortunately, always go to the best attorneys. They'd go to the most visible known marketers, which were the big advertisers that, smaller firms couldn't compete with. So how does a firm that doesn't have the resources of a large firm, that can't afford to advertise on billboards or TV or radio, that doesn't have the size team that these large, Goliath law firms have, how do they compete and how can they be competitive when you see the deck so heavily stacked against them? And that's where, a lot of what we do really came from. So we found that if we could help them stand out and differentiate, if we could help them, basically humanize their practice, articulate clearly what makes them different, to really build connections with their audience and then get that message out in a medium that, to them is much more accessible, which is social media, that they would have a fighting chance. And we've actually found that over the years, they started to pick away a lot of the big cases from the larger firms. So, through that experience, we niched down to 100% in law firms. That's all we do. That's the only work that we do. But then it was always about, well, how do we provide them with more and more support? Because we've got this, this crazy $1 billion mission where we want to help 1,000 law firm owners grow by $1 million each. We want to help make that impact over the next 5 years. So in order to actually do that, we found that, okay, you can create great content and you can market that content. But, learning this myself through our business. So as we've grown over the years, we've doubled every year since our inception for the last 8 years. We grew something like 1,000+% over the last 3 years. I was learning a lot of lessons along the way that you almost, when you can start to see the matrix, it's almost a disservice to not be able to offer that type of insight to another entrepreneur and business owner, to be able to help them with the things that they are struggling with, which are very similar that we were on our path as we were growing. So that's where the coaching came to be.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's cool. And it's very similar to sort of where I come from. Like I said, I just different though, because I have my law firm too that I'm running, right? Which is important to me. One of the things that I'm always curious about with people that grow their businesses really fast, because I think I think it can apply to law firms too. Was there a time? So you start out and you're just doing a few law firms. You decide, okay, we want to like do this bigger, right? Like, how did you make that shift, sort of both mentally and then also physically, like not physically, but from a monetary standpoint, right? Because there's always, even if just speaking from my law firm, right? There's always this sort of this fight between how fast you want to grow and how much cash you have to impact growth of the business, right? Because you have to advertise, you need to invest, but there's also that idea of, if you put too much cash out, you may not have enough cash left before the advertising kicks in, right? Because there's always a little bit of a delay between we put the thing out, the thing comes back in. Does that make sense? Like for your own business, how did you navigate those waters and make those choices?
I could even pinpoint the exact like month and year where that was like the big catalyst behind a lot of that, which was in April of 2017. So I started the business in 2012, and then April 2017 was really the catalyst behind a lot of that big growth. And and I can even share with you the experience there and the decision making that basically led to that. So we were growing for year over year up to that point, but when you're doubling and you start doubling larger numbers, it's like that gets increasingly more difficult, not just in the infrastructure that you have to have, but the type of marketing that you're doing. Like everything scales, and it becomes more challenging to keep that up and to be able to basically continue to double. So for me, I looked at it from the standpoint that we had aspirations of being able to make a greater impact and doing more and being more. So from the onset, I didn't want us to just be in the video conversation or in the video marketing conversation. We wanted to be in the growth conversation. It's like if a law firm was talking about growing their business, I wanted Chris to be in that conversation. And early on, someone would be like, well, that's cute, right? Like we just get these nice videos done. You guys can, believe what you believe. You can, change the world, but, can I just get a video, please? But, when you're thinking that way, it's like, how do we make a greater impact? And there's this bet that we placed in 2017. So it didn't happen exactly in April. And April was where what led to that growth. But it was a client referral program that we launched. So at the time, everyone's giving away like Amazon gift cards or an iPad or an Apple Watch. and we decided to give a car away. And it wasn't just like any car, it was a Tesla Model S. Now, I poured into my savings to get this Tesla. People are like, how'd you give away a Tesla? And I'm like, well, I went to the dealership and I wrote a check, and that's it. But I understand what they're really asking. And I say this in the sense that when I made that mindset shift to start placing a bigger bet, the whole idea behind that was that, at the time, I could almost guarantee that we weren't going to be able to get to where we wanted to go within any reasonable time frame, like within 10, 20 years, unless we started to place a much bigger bet. But at the same time, that was also terrifying because I'm pulling that, the Tesla was $77,000. I'm pulling that out of my savings. I didn't have anything. Like literally, I'm not even going out to dinner. I'm not doing anything. And I get this Tesla, and I think it's such a great idea. And I drive it back to the office, and I'm like, as soon as we announce this thing, everybody's going to love it. And we're going to get so many referrals. And when we announced it the first month, we didn't get a single referral. So I've got this, are we allowed to use profanities on this thing?
Of course. Yeah. Let it go. Let it rip, man. Let it rip.
So I've got this oh shit moment where every day I drive into the office, I see this thing parked out front, and I'm like, we got to make it work.
Right.
Because otherwise we made it so public. Like we told our clients, we're giving this thing away at this conference in April. It was at the AVO conference in Vegas. And we had some time leading up to that, but we had to be able to basically make the program work. And we did. But when we were going to that conference in April, this was probably the biggest thing we had done at the time. We were actually going to give the car away in Vegas at AVO. And I was in so far already. I was like, well, let's get the top sponsorship, which meant we were the Wi-Fi password, the booth next to the stage.
Oh, nice.
Like we were the letters in the pool. Like this sponsorship will never exist for anyone ever again. Like it was so ridiculous that it's like, we were the napkins, like everything you could think of. It's like Chris on it. So, because we took half the company there. It was the single biggest initiative we had done. My eyes twitching, going into the whole thing, because I'm like, look, we're gonna have to give the car away. That I didn't know what a moment that would have been. And when that went well, like that was what we first gained the confidence to start placing bigger bets. So the company did double that year. But more importantly, it was the fact that we had done something that was so outrageous and so scary and terrifying. So I never knew the outcomes of any of these things. Like I didn't know if it would work or not work. But I found that when you make something public, and then when you basically write the check, it has a way of inspiring the fear perhaps of the fire to find a way and make it work and be creative and be innovative. Because I find that sometimes the thinking is, well, what if I do this and it doesn't work? Well, what if you don't do it at all? You're kind of guaranteed not to have any upside. You could have downside if it doesn't work, but what if it does work, right? That's how I look at it from that standpoint. And then the reason why I point out that moment in particular is because as that grew and we were the ridiculous ones giving away Teslas, over the next, I think what was that, in 2017, so 17, 18, 19, really over the next 2.5, 3 years, we gave away 9 cars, 8 Teslas and a Ferrari. Okay.
Nice.
And again, I'm reminding people where we started. That 77,000, that the first Tesla, that was me that was me wiping out my entire savings. Like there were no loans taken. There was none of that stuff. Like it was literally betting big on that. So I guess it's a long-winded way of answering the question, but I always look at it from the standpoint that if the end result is transformational enough, like if it's going to change your life, like if achieving this would allow you to become a new company that can make a greater impact, that is so worthwhile to you. Because I find that if the goal is too small, so if it's something where it's like, I talk to business leaders and they're like, we're going to grow by 5% or 10%. And I'm like, well, is that significant enough to you? Meaning that let's say you do it, your life doesn't really change, right? So a 5 or 10% increment, I don't know, you can go to the same places for dinner, you have the same furniture, it's like, is it really that much more worthwhile? And I fear that when you set goals like that, you're less likely to achieve them because they just don't excite you. But if it's some goal where it's like, hey, we're going to grow at this level, that's going to allow us to impact twice as many people, that's going to transform the way we operate. Like we doubled as a team every year as well. We doubled the number of clients every year as well. That to me was exciting and was really a fun game worth playing because it was exciting and challenging and terrifying and all these things at the same time. But what built confidence was doing it and following through on it, which set us up, the following year to give away Model X, and then the following year to give away 3 Model 3s. We would have never done any of that stuff had we not placed the bet on the first one. So I look at this and say, you have to start somewhere.
What was the thing that got the response that you were looking for? Was it like a subtle shift that got the referrals rolling? Was it just a matter of time and people and your clients sort of like remembering like, oh, this is out there? Like what happened?
Yeah.
What happened?
So we realized about a month in, because I was like, why aren't we getting any referrals? Because we had team members going out to client offices and like shoots and things like that, and they would ask them about it. And we found out, and this was like, a thank you or an F you to all the internet marketers out there rolling around in their Ferraris or whatever doing these videos. They didn't believe we were actually doing it. Like they thought it was so outlandish that this wasn't real. So we actually ended up creating a lot of content. We sent everybody Tesla keychains. We reached out to every single person individually. I mean, it was all hands on deck. And because we didn't realize that one of the first barriers was the fact that, one, people didn't know we were serious. Two, they didn't really know how to participate because you had to make it easy. Like our clients are busy. They've got, so many different things going on in their own business. So when we looked at it from the standpoint of how do we eliminate every barrier, and then that's where things started to really pick up.
Yeah. Yeah, that's key, man. If you can, it's so interesting that, usually the first idea doesn't always work out the way that you want, and you got to just keep trying shit until it happens, and also with eliminating barriers to entry, I work a lot on that in my firm, just thinking about like, what is the objection the client's going to raise for me trying to get them to do this thing? It's like, that's why I don't have, I'll do phone meetings. All my fee agreements are DocuSign. I'm just like, how can I make this like it's so easy for people to say yes? How can I just make it as easy as possible for people to do this thing that I want them to do? And that makes a huge difference, man. That's cool. All right, that's awesome. And what how's the man? So many questions. It's cool. Who won the car? Do you remember?
So, yes, of course. This was actually amazing too, because here's another side to these giveaways, and we've done them as they're really raffles and they're drawings. So, which is terrifying in its own right, because it's like, well, what happens if it's like the person who wins it is like a marketing assistant at some firm, or like what if they're not even there? Like we learned after the first two that we had to add a provision that you had to be present on site, because when we gave away the second one, the winner wasn't even there, which was kind of anticlimactic. So the first one was Kim Fry. She's the criminal defense attorney out of Marietta, Georgia. And like that one. So what I will say is that like, it's when the person who wins it is someone who's like so supportive and such a huge advocate, and you're like, man, I'm really glad they won it. Because I'm always in the back of my mind, I'm always thinking like, I hope it's someone who's grateful, and I hope it's someone that's going to keep this thing, right? Because when we've given away the cars, it's not a lease; they own the car, so they can, if they want to, they can go sell it, they can do whatever they want with it. But I always think like, man, wouldn't it be great if it went to someone who like it would literally change their life, that they would embrace it, they would love it. So when that happened, and I would say that we haven't batted 100% on this. So over the 9 cars we've given away, but more often than not, I think we batted like 70% of the time we got it right. It's like the winner has gone to like the right. I wouldn't say the wrong person. I don't want to offend anybody, but I say in words, someone who is like, it changes their life so much that it made a much greater impact on them than it would have on somebody else.
Yeah, that's badass. That's cool. Let's talk about like what's right in front of us, right? Actually, I want to talk about it in a couple of different contexts. But right, we got the coronavirus thing going on. This is one of the cool things about doing something like this is we get to talk about current events and not worry about it blasting into the future. But how are like, okay, so this is my non-business question.
Okay.
Because I like to just talk about stuff. How do you feel like this is all going right now, just in general? Coronavirus, general thoughts overall, just in general. How are you feeling about this whole thing? First.
So the way this is going to be interpreted always depends on the audience, right? Because, but I'll just say it the way one man's opinion.
Yeah.
I think that setbacks sort people. So meaning that and again, I talk from a standpoint of business leaders. I don't want to basically gloss over the fact that there's a lot of people going through a very, very, very difficult time. I mean, we see it in our communities, and I don't want to come across as like an insensitive asshole, because that's not the case. But I'm also the believer of like, control what you can control. There's many 100%. Things that, we don't control what's going on in the government. We don't control like, basically the surprise we may have tomorrow or the week after or what have you. But we do control what's going on in our own lives, and we do control what's going on in our businesses and so on. And Yeah, I think this is an opportunity to, one, for business leaders, you can find out who's legit and who are the true leaders, and then who's only succeeds in times of prosperity, right? Because
Yeah.
when things get tough, you find out, okay, who should really be an entrepreneur and who is just kind of messing around here. They thought, that perhaps this was a path for them. You see the way that people treat their teams, you see the way people treat their clients, like, and you can really, so I think the key word is like exposure. Like, people and businesses are exposed. You're exposed for who you are. If you were a selfish asshole before this, you're gonna be more of that, during times of adversity, because you're gonna be cutting back, you're gonna be laying people off, you're gonna be basically trying to go straight into survival mode. Whereas if you're someone who's, let's say, visionary, you're focused on like giving and leadership, then you're first gonna think about your team, your family, your clients, like your community, all those different things, and you'll respond that way. And I do believe people are going to be remembered for how they responded to this when all time passes. But in truth, I view this as a tremendous opportunity to, if you are responding in the right way. So meaning that if everybody is handicapped, it's those who are better at problem solving, that are more creative, that are more strategic, that are more innovative, that can pivot better, to pivot their businesses and so on. Like, they're going to be able to make tremendous leaps during this time because of how they adjust and how they can adapt. So if you're like good at adapting, this is a wonderful time to gain ground. If you're not, this is a terrifying time, because like, it's going to be much harder for you. Like, we saw businesses that, it took them weeks to go remote. We saw other businesses that were remote in a day. We saw businesses that didn't have like cloud-based phone systems, and they're kind of screwed. But there were also the ones that already implemented that type of technology. So if you were a good business before this, meaning that you had sound fundamentals, sound operations, a great team, a great culture, you're not really dealing with the same issues in terms of trust and accountability and like working remote. And just because you put those measures in place, so you actually have the opportunity to come out a better business. If you didn't pay attention to those things and just were living in prosperity times, just basically like, hey, I'm not going to worry about any of our systems, don't worry about the culture, don't care about the people. Well, now you're finding yourself in a much more difficult position, because it's like, the ones that gathered acorns for the winter versus the ones that were YOLO, right? And it's, you got to choose how you handle yourself. But the good news is that anybody right now, any business owner and business leader still has that opportunity to make their business better. But it's hard to make your business better if you're complaining about coronavirus, every day. It's like, you choose where you want to focus your attention on, what you can control versus the things that you can't.
Yep. No doubt. 100%. It's really, it's interesting. In your Facebook feed tells you a lot about people that are, well, your Facebook friends at least, but
it's like,
it's crazy.
Yeah.
I just started blocking everybody basically that was talking any kind of shit about anything. It didn't even matter, because it's like you said, 100%, control what you can control and just kind of forget about everything else, and it's interesting when it comes to, like for my firm, we literally had no problem, like the volume of clients has changed a little bit. I think I'm in Seattle, by the way. So like, we're like on a relatively, everybody is being pretty strict about trying to like stay in, I think. And the economic times, I think, are causing people to be a little bit more cautious with where they spend their money. I do estate planning too, right? So, but as far as transitioning I just hired an attorney too. She just started a week ago. So I'm like, let's just do this thing. It doesn't matter to me. And it's also a great time because, we have a little bit of extra time to like train and like do fun things. And,
Chris, I've been telling people, I'm like, the two greatest complaints that I would hear from law firm owners is, one, I don't have time to focus on like, working on my business, making it better. And two, I can't find good people. And now you don't have time to work on your business. That's more of a question of discipline. And if you can't find good people in a labor market with an unemployment rate as of today, probably 25 million plus,
right, no doubt.
And again, I don't know what to tell you, but it kind of removes all those barriers like we were talking about. Like, if you want to be a better business and you want to make a better business, what an incredible time when the world's on pause.
Yep, for sure. I'm curious, because I think you probably have your finger on sort of like the pulse of the legal community, just because of the clients that you interact with and things like that. What sort of overall, how like, are you seeing any trends with particular practice areas? Are you seeing trends with businesses? Like what, like, it's a very broad question because I just kind of want to leave it a little open for you to sort of like give your thoughts on like how this is affecting attorneys. That makes sense?
Yeah, well, like I'll give you the truthful answer. So if what people want to hear is that there's some practice areas that are less impacted than others, and that there are some that are still thriving. So if you had a number, let's say you're a personal injury lawyer and you had a number of cases in inventory, and you already had revenue that you were going to bank for the year, and you're not feeling it, that's one thing. Versus if you're a criminal defense attorney, you're relying on like, more short-term cash flow, and that stops. But in truth, so like I'll give you the truthful answer. Because we speak to attorneys in all practice areas, literally everything, like family law, estate planning, criminal defense, everything across the board. And when you speak to someone who is so proactive and growth minded, they're still having their best month ever. Like I know it sounds crazy in every type of market. And you're like, well, what do I do if the courts are closed? Or what do I do if, like all these different barriers, but they are leaning on their community. They're starting to like focus on collaborating with other attorneys that may have been seen as competitors, but now are collaborators. Like they've reached out to their local network. Like there is business to be found. And then the other thing is many of them are of the mindset of, look, when the floodgates open, I know we're all going to be on the starting line. I want to get a running start. So what do I need to do now to expand my capacity, to build our team, to put that infrastructure in place to do it? Yeah. So it's always a matter of perspective. And I don't want to be insensitive to the person that's like, well, it's nice for you to say, but like I don't have any money. Like I don't have any cash flow. I don't have any things like that. And again, I will bring this back to, well, what did you sign up for? Like if you sign up to start, like you starting a business means you're effectively betting on yourself. Like you wanted to place that bet that you could make the decisions to drive better outcomes for your life than relying upon somebody else. And during times like this, it's like, okay, you're being tested. So figure it out. They're like, well, it's cute that you didn't lay anybody off, but like, I don't have that option. I said, okay, well, sure you do. It's like, we're all feeling the pain. I'm feeling the pain. Like we see in our business, we have 70 people. Like, so all I can say is that, of course, like you have that responsibility as a leader to figure it out. It's like why you're there, right? It's like I put out a video a while back and, I got 50-50, like love, hate, but it was just, hey, this is a great time to do your job, right? It's like the great time to be useful because everybody's looking to you for like, how do we navigate this? And if people are looking for stability, they're looking for clarity, they're at least looking, if nothing else, just for a plan. But it's amazing what can happen if you stop thinking about what you can't do and start to think about what you can do.
Right. There's always solutions, if you're just out there looking for them. I see that all the time too. It's like everybody's got excuses, it's like, look, if you don't want to do this, that's fine. You can tell me all the reasons why you can't. Just go make it happen. Because the thing is, somebody's out there making it happen. It's like I always use like, real estate agents in the wintertime always cry. But people are still buying and selling houses. It's like, why aren't you the one that they're talking to? Because they're talking to somebody.
I would challenge anybody who's watching this, because I used to have the same mental block. Like years ago, I would hear things like the holidays are a slow time, right? Around Thanksgiving, around Christmas, like those are slow periods in a business. And then when we had a year when it was like the best month of that year for us, November was the best month and December was the best month. I was like, well, maybe I need to change like what I believe, because it would just demonstrate that wasn't true. Yeah. And like, what if that these 3 months were the best 3 months in the history of your practice? Would that potentially recalibrate what you believe during this time? And, again, I always think about the skeptic who's watching this that thinks full of shit. And like, you know what I mean? Like they're just thinking, okay, that's easy to say, but give me something practical. And you look at, periods of adversity. I'm a student of history. So I look back at like depressions and recessions and see like, well, who are the businesses that thrived during that time or gained the most ground? So you usually find that in periods of adversity where there is a depression, like, that's where the market leaps happen. That's where like the market leaders are replaced, and you might have a business that wasn't really, at the top that like makes those big strides because of how strategic they are. And if you remember, I think in 2008, there was this product that came out, as the recession's hitting, homes are being foreclosed on, no one has any money, the market is tanking. And who would have thought that it would be a great idea to release a $1,000 iPhone, right? The first iPhone.
Right.
Like, it's like literally, is it the worst time in history to release it? but that's what happened. And we all know what, how that took off. And like, so if, there's always like ways to innovate. And where I'll say, it's just like, think about whatever, whatever somebody else is doing, whatever your like average person, let's say, the way that they could respond, which means that they're pulling back, they're either laying people off, they're cutting back on marketing spend, they're cutting back on different investments in their business. Realize that a lot of business owners are doing that. So what opportunities does that create? Well, when people cut down on marketing, the ad buys become cheaper. So you can actually get more at a lower cost. Like we saw in social ads right now, I think like they're 33% off. Amazing. Yep. And then the consumption is double. So like people are consuming twice as much, that costs, 33% less. They're sitting at home. It's a great time to make those ad buys. We know firms that were doing some TV or some radio. A lot of the TV and radio advertisers pulled out. So they reached out to those, like the TV stations, the radio stations, and were like, look, we'll buy up those empty ads, like those slots, but but they're getting bottom barrel pricing, and then they're getting that guaranteed even after COVID.
Yeah.
So like
That's
you can
badass.
make these power moves. It's the same way where it's like, okay, you just mentioned hiring, an attorney, but you could hire a lot of really great people right now. Like there's, we've hired, I think in the last like 3-4 weeks, we've hired 5 or 6 people, I believe. And it's because like, well, we're trying to gear up to expand capacity. We want to like use this time to double down and like to step up. And again, the person's saying easy for you to say, man, we've been working more than ever. I've been working harder than ever. This has been a very, very, very challenging and difficult time. When we're paying out, payroll for 70 people is not inexpensive. Like that hurts. Like, you know what I mean? It is a painful, like financial move, but coming back to how do you want to be remembered when this is over? When you provide that stability, and security for the team, and then they see the path forward. They've never worked harder. They've never been more dedicated. The team has never been more like, just the morale and the camaraderie of all that. It makes it worth it because that, in itself, them being that actually drives the result, and the business is growing as a result. So that's the thing I would challenge someone to the standpoint that if you get all freaked out right now, you lay off 70% of your team, you go into preservation mode. When you come out of this, chances are you're going to have to hire some people back, maybe, and then the other attorneys in your community, judges and so on, they're going to remember you as the guy who laid off 75% of their people 2 weeks into this whole thing. Will that help you long term?
Right. Yeah, it's also this is also a great time to, sometimes people are reluctant to make changes because they don't want to rock the boat and they don't want to, they don't want to mess up something that's moving smoothly. Like now is also a great time to try that new thing or implement that new system that you've been thinking about. Like just because you don't have much to lose. Like everybody's expecting. The great thing is when everybody's expecting everybody to fail, you can do whatever the hell you want, because if it doesn't work out, nobody's even paying attention because they're too worried about their own stuff, so it's a great time to just try new stuff or with this time, like we talked about earlier, implement some new system or think about some new thing that you want. One of the things that I'm always amazed at is how little law firm owners sort of look at the big picture and think about how to structure their businesses so that it actually gives them what they want. It's like, why are you working all the time? You don't need to do that. Why are you chained to your desk? Like, you don't need to do that. Like, you just take a little bit of time and put in a little bit of effort. Like, you can create some amazing things for your life. And why not right now?
Well, I'm hoping that someone looks at the situation and almost evaluates and let's say they're really hurt by this and it's impacted them on a very deep level and say, okay, well, like how did that happen? And more importantly, what do I need to do different in my business to make sure that I am set up so this type of thing never happens again? Like I said, it comes back to exposure. Maybe they realize, you know what, we need to implement more technology. We need to reinforce our culture. We need to, I need to read more books. Like I always find it interesting. Like there are going to be firm owners during this time that are so dedicated, so committed, so disciplined that their business comes out better. They came in with a beer gut. They come out with 6-pack abs.
Nice,
like
right.
They're fitter. They're more energized. Like imagine using your time that way. And it's just reinforcing the mindset. I mean, the most successful people that I speak with all the time, it's not about today. It's about, always thinking about the long term. Like, where are we going? How do we set ourselves up? Not just so the phone rings 16 minutes from now, but like, how do we make sure that the phone never stops ringing? How do we set ourselves up for the next 3 years, 5 years, and so on, and focusing on those things? Because if you were heavily reliant upon, like, let's say short-term drivers of marketing, like lead services, let's say even some pay-per-click, things like that, or even any one source, any one platform, anything like that, the potential like risk that that creates. Like, let's say that one place goes down. Let's say, you know, everybody's quarantined, so, you know, they're not on the roads anymore, whatever it is. Like, you got to create more spokes so that you're not so liable in a situation like this. So if anything, again, I'm like, you know, I'm optimistic by nature. We look the same way in our business, and we're like, hey, we're not as good as we think we are. We got to improve this.
Yeah.
And then you get to work. But then as I'm speaking to firm owners that have been doing this exercise, they're saying, we wouldn't have done this had it not been for an event like this, for like, this was the catalyst behind us making this better, behind us, you know, improving our team, behind us doing all the things that may not have happened for either years from today or maybe never at all. So the thing I've been saying is, what if we made 3 years progress in 3 months? And if you look at it, you know, with the right mindset and you approach it in the right way and you're proactive every day, you know, what if you come out a better business?
Yeah, no doubt, 100%. I mean, there's just so much. There's an abundance of opportunity available if you're just willing to sort of see it. You know, one of the things I was thinking about just now when you're talking about this, you know, I'm a big fan of like multiple streams of new clients and having many different ways to get people for that exact reason. So I started, this is my second law firm. When I started my first law firm, I started in 2008, 2009, right at the bottom of the recession. But I was kind of an SEO geek way back in the day when you could just game the system like crazy, right? And that was how I got all my clients. I didn't even do pay-per-click. I did nothing. It was all SEO, and I crushed. And then, you know, like the Panda update happened, and I was like, man, where are all my people at? Literally, I was like, one day it just was like nothing. It was gone. And I was like, man, that's a hard lesson to learn. That was like a significant event in my business growth in particular. So where that kind of leads me, what I was curious about is, with your own business and just your business philosophy in general, are you kind of a scorched earth kind of a guy? What I mean is, hit them everywhere, hit them hard, hit them all the time, kind of a philosophy? Is like that what you kind of use with your own business and promote with your clients as well? Like where do you stand on kind of that, just that in general?
So it's a good question. So I used to believe when we started our company that if we were simply the best at what we did, that would be enough for us to be successful. So like, even when we started Crisp, we had great videos and we believed them to be superior videos, and yet we weren't really growing. And that was a humbling lesson to learn, because we had such a great product, but we were like the best kept secret. And we tell law firm owners this all the time. It's like, man, you guys are the best lawyers, but no one's ever heard of you. It's like,
right.
you know, so, you know, over the years, my mindset has shifted into the fact that best known really beats best. And where I've even told the marketing team, I'm like, you know, remember back in the day, we only had one TV channel. We have a lot of young people, so they do not remember that at all.
Right.
So like they're like, they don't even remember, you know, they've never heard of Saved by the Bell, or they barely know the Flintstones.
Right.
So that said, but I'm a big believer in omnipresence. I think you should be on every single channel all the time if you can. Now, you've got to have great content, so you've got to have something where it's worth tuning into. So I know a lot of people say attention spans are so short these days. I don't know that I buy into that so much as the fact that there's content that's so plentiful that people are either going to be 100% dialed in or 100% dialed out. If you've got great content, it doesn't matter if the video is 30 seconds or 30 minutes. Great content, they'll hang around for 30 minutes. Bad content, they're not going to watch for 30 seconds. So to me, it's about the fact that, like, yes, if you can be on every channel. And what I mean by that is like, if you could literally be on every channel, great. But, you know, on social, wherever people are spending their time, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, you know, wherever they go, that if you're remaining constantly top of mind, if you're staying in the conversation and you're remaining relevant, I've actually found that not everyone even needs to agree with you. It's more so about the fact that you're on their mind. The other aspect of this is in fact that taking a side, or like having something you clearly believe in. So last year we had this campaign throughout the year where we took a stand against complacency. We took a stand against complacent lawyers, and we're like, if you're a complacent lawyer, we are not for you. Go the other way. Don't attend our conference. Don't do it, whatever. And
right.
There were a number of complacent lawyers that got offended by that. They're like, what do you mean? But I'll tell you, on the other side of that, the killers, the ones that were like committed, growth minded, they're like, hell yeah, like to hell with these complacent people. So it's taking a stance means that it's going to resonate. Like, let's say it's going to offend a number of people. I'm sure, you can't get them all to agree and love you, but it's going to resonate strongly with the ones that do believe. And if you try to be all things to everyone, basically vanilla, you're not going to resonate with anybody. So
Right.
it's okay. And I've actually found that our greatest promoters and our greatest marketers are people that we've never met, people that don't like me, don't like us, don't agree with our messaging, and yet they're spreading the word from the top of the mountain. It's like your so-called, I guess, your haters, if you will, but it's like, hey man, at least they're talking about us. We don't have to spend money on their, on their promotion and the shares, right? They're doing that for free for us. So at the end of the day, I think if you can be in the conversation and remain relevant, that's always been the thing that helps with building a long-lasting brand.
Yeah, for sure. What are you guys doing? What's working for you guys right now in your business promotion? That's sort of getting the most track. Oh, you know what? Oh, so keep that. I don't want to forget my other question.
Okay.
Actually, what? Okay, so I want to keep that question. We'll end on that one. But what? This is something I was thinking about when it comes to sort of this omnipresence, because I believe in that as well. But what I get from people is, well, how do I know where somebody came from, right? How can I track these conversions and things like that? And what I typically say is, honest, for me at least, this, you may not agree with this at all. I'm like, I don't really care where they came from necessarily. I'm more looking at sort of like, what am I investing in marketing at all overall? And like, kind of like, what is the return? Because somebody is going to may come to Facebook and then Google you or see you on YouTube or find, you know what I'm saying? Like it's really difficult to track. And I don't know that it's really that important necessarily, like, because there are metrics that you do want to look at. So like on Facebook, for example, you may want to know how long are people watching your videos? What are you paying to get a certain amount of watch so that you can see if your content is relevant. But as far as like, does that specific person call you and hire you? I don't know if that's that important,
Yeah, so I agree with that. And it was, because this is like the matter of like attribution. It's like, hey, how do I know where they came from? I think at best, it's not going to be accurate. At worst, you'll be completely off, because, I mean, think about it. Like somebody, let's say the attribution source that says like Google search. Well, how do they hear about the firm? How do they know the name? How do they know what to Google? Maybe they saw a YouTube video. Maybe they drove by a billboard. We're finding that it's requiring, so this is a concept of like effective frequency, that people have to see something enough times before they take action. And you're seeing that at minimum it's 7, usually it's 20 plus times, and it's covering across a multitude of touch points that someone's like, well, what's the ROI of this specific social post? It's like, well, look, I couldn't tell you, but you're also, perhaps you're not measuring it in the right way. I mean, the example I've always given is the mattresses that I have in my house, the purple mattresses. I saw these purple ads for years, man, like years. And they hit me with these ads. And then when we moved into our home, we had to buy mattresses. We went online, purple.com, bought them. Their paid ads team never got credit for this, like I never clicked on any one of those ads. And, I bet you they're sitting in some meeting one day and they're like, guys, these paid ads aren't working, right? Hopefully not, because they are working. But it's how many things, stay on top of mind. So the right way to really measure it is, like you said, like to look at it as an aggregate of what is your total investment in marketing. Let's say you look at it over a period of 3 months or 6 months, and then you can quantify what's your cost per lead, what's your cost of acquisition, cost per case. I think your cost per case actually matters more in terms of your average case value, because it's like, well, who cares if you spent $100,000 to acquire a $20 million case, right? Doesn't that just completely break the whole formula? But if you're marketing, let's say, high volume, low value cases, then you're going to have to be mindful much more of that. But it's because everything has to be approached these days as an aggregate. The idea that someone sees you, like they see a banner ad somewhere, click, become a client, is so unlikely. They probably watched a YouTube pre-roll ad. They saw the banner ad. They saw a video on Facebook. They're watching this, all these different things. So our strategy has been, again, omnipresence, but it's also, as crazy as this sounds, and I mean this truthfully, because it took me a while to wrap my head around this, it's create a lot of great content that's of value to your audience, give it away for free, ask for nothing. It's like this revolutionary thing, because like, I talk to firm owners and they're like, well, wait a second, well, where's the call to action? And I'm like, well, there isn't one. Like, they're like, well, wait a second, like, how do they call you? How do they hire you? How do you do whatever? And it's like, well, I'm not counting on them just listening to a podcast or, watching a video that we're just, documenting something in the business. I'm not doing that so they hire us. We're doing that so they trust us and we provide them with value and we're credible. And then when they need us, they can reach out because we're the only ones not asking for something.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's 100% true. And what I also find too is, attorneys, they want their businesses to do well, but they don't want to do a lot of the work to do that. And they're willing to find any distraction to allow them to do things they like, which is like analyze data and do research and think. And when you get to dive into like Google Analytics or something, or like, you know, any of these things, it can just be like that welcome distraction that allows them to not actually make a video or like do the thing that is scary to them, or that is going, you know, has to be out there in public and judged. So I'm always just trying to get people to just do it. You know, like that complacency thing too. It's like, look, stop finding excuses. Just do something, and you'll be surprised with what happens. You know, it's crazy.
Yeah, I would say like the magic formula. I know people get so tied up in tactics, and I think they sometimes get frustrated. Maybe even in a conversation like this, where you speak high level and you talk mindset, and they're like, "But tell me, do I post at 2:00 or at 6 p.m.?" And like I was on a webinar the other week, and literally we gave them 20 things to do, and I said it there. I was like, I would be surprised. There was like a few hundred people on. I was like, I'd be surprised if one person here even did it, because I don't say that to be disrespectful. I don't say that to offend anybody. It's just the fact that you guys are waiting for that next thing, that next book to read, the next piece of content. And it's like, just go online and create a video, you know?
That's right.
Start.
Yeah. And it's also important too to just know that any one video that you make, any one piece of content that you make, any one action you take is probably not going to be something that like blows you up. You know, it's not like law firms don't really go viral, you know, that just, it just doesn't happen, you know? So you really have to run the marathon, show up every day, be consistent, you know, and just be there all the time. Omnipresence doesn't just mean advertising. It also means in your showing up for your business every day, you know, too. So I think that's also, people are just waiting for that thing. They're like, okay, well, when's the thing that I'm going to do is just going to work? You know, it's like, well, I don't know. It doesn't work like that.
It's like, it's with anything, right? So business, with fitness, if you're consistent enough on a long enough runway, you can accomplish pretty much any goal.
Yeah.
If you show up to the gym consistently enough, day in and day out for years, like you'll get there. You'll do it. It's the same thing with your business. If you show up every day and you're consistent, if you're putting out content, if you're spending, let's say, an hour marketing every day, if you're, you know, whatever that might be, reading a book every single week, you know, whatever that might be, like those, being consistent, I think trumps. You got to be careful with, you know, those, you know, these verbs, but like it trumps everything. It really does.
That's
it's
right.
Like,
yeah.
It's like the people that say they want to turn it on sometimes, turn it off another time, like every single day. Like if you are not thinking about your business every single day, if you're one of those people that's like, I don't think about it on the weekends, like I think it's really a good time to look inward and know thyself and say, is this for you? Or would you be better off? And, you know, I know we're getting to the tail end here, so I don't want to open up a can of worms, but just, would you be better off working for an entrepreneur and working at a practice? Could you be happier that way without having to shoulder all these challenges and problems? Because I think the entrepreneurs who are truly obsessed, that think about this all the time, that it doesn't feel like work for them. Like on the weekend, if I'm reading something, I'm thinking about something, I'm not like, hey, stop thinking about the business. It's like, no, I love it. Like, I couldn't, like, we could talk about anything else and I'd be really bad at it. Like this topic I could talk about for hours, but if you were like, you know, I don't know, some random topic, golf, I don't know anything about golf, you know, couldn't really tell you about it. I'm like, okay, I think it's interesting, you know? So I think from that standpoint, it's knowing thyself. And if you're a true entrepreneur, times like this, you know, in wartime are really exciting, because you're like that wartime general that's like, all right, this is my opportunity to be a leader, to do the things that we need to do to pivot and adjust. And the best businesses come out of this.
Yeah, 100%, man. And you're right. Hey, and that's a really great place to end. I think for people, just look, be honest with yourself, know where you're coming from. If you're willing to put in the work, you can have success. You just got to show up every day. I agree with you 100%. All right. It's time, man. Time is up. So I really appreciate you. Where can people find you? Like where, you know, give us the thing, you know?
Yeah. Well, the simplest thing is really so we wrote a book on all this stuff, on all the marketing. It's kind of like the DIY book. It's right behind me. It's called The Game Changing Attorney. So if you go to gamechangingattorney.com, there's a book and a podcast. Nice. The book's on Amazon and Barnes & Noble too, but I think that's a good entry point, because rather than try to sell anybody anything, I think if they have better clarity, if someone has better clarity over what are the challenges, how they can respond, what their options are, what they can do, they can make the best decision for themselves. And, you know, that's why I wrote the book. It was literally everything we know, put it in one concise book. Here's how you do it. And, you know, and in truth, we found that, okay, well, sometimes people read it and they learn, and they're like, I don't want to do any of that. Can we just hire somebody to do it? And it doesn't even have to be us. You just honestly, if you're growing your business and you're being proactive, I will tip my hat to you. And then on the podcast, we started by the same name. It was literally just interviewing other growth-minded market leaders and, breaking down their mindset, which is, to me, always the most fascinating thing. Like, how does somebody think? How do they make decisions? How does this guy who's got, who's going to do $1 billion in fees this year, how do they operate every day? Like, what do they eat for breakfast? So that's what the podcast is about. So.
Yeah, I've heard it. John Morgan was the first one, right? On there.
Yep. Yeah, they're on a small up and coming firm. Yep.
Yeah. Right. Yep. Right. Just a little something. It is good. It is a good podcast, man. I'd encourage everybody to go check it out. So, all right. I like I said, I really appreciate you coming on. Like I said, I love at the beginning. I just like to talk about this stuff, and it's always fascinating for me. So I appreciate you. Thanks a lot for your time, and that's it, man. That's a wrap.
Cool, Chris. Well, I appreciate it, brother. This has been great.
Yeah, thanks, man. Have a great day, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Cool. See you.
All right. Bye.